All right, folks. I am back, your host for Deep Cinema, Theron Barney, here to review All the Money in the World, the controversial Ridley Scott film that had excised Kevin Spacey out of the role of Signora Getty. And going to talk about my thoughts on that as well as my thoughts on the Netflix series Black Mirror, one of my favorite series out there now. So before we get into that, check out my brand spanking new intro, and I'll see you on the other side. Hit 'em. All right. So, shout out to Keith Andes, who produced this great intro for me on the fly. He did it in less than a day, or probably less than that in terms of working hours. But sent him a text, and got back a rough uh, of it yesterday, and then he sent the final earlier this morning, right at New Year's. So shout out to Keith Andes for that. Thank you, man. This will be the staple intro and sound that hopefully you guys will be humming in your sleep when you're anticipating the next episode of Deep Cinema. Okay, all right. So I saw All the Money in the World this weekend, and wanted to just dive in to that film. And like I mentioned, it it has some controversies around it, because as everyone, unless you've been hiding under a rock, everybody knows that Kevin Spacey has been accused, in the court of public opinion. As it stands, he has not stand an actual trial, nor do I think any actual lawsuits have been brought forth. But either way, enough people have come forward with testimonial that Kevin Spacey, touched and made comments of a sexual nature in and around the workplace, or even outside of the, of a professional creative space, to cause enough that trouble and noise that Ridley Scott and the producers of the film All the Money in the World decided to remove him from the film and replace his part playing Paul Getty with Christopher Plummer. Christopher Plummer being a renowned actor of a certain caliber. I mean, the man is almost 90, or I think he is 90 years old, or close to that. And he's been around and in many films over the decades. But it just seems like Christopher Plummer had, at least in my knowledge, experience watching his films, he's always been at that stature. I don't remember Christopher Plummer as an actor like from way back in the day or anything, but he's certainly been sort of a staple of the cinema of aging actors. And I shouldn't say that. It's not about aging or anything like that. But you just always, when you think of Christopher Plummer, that is what comes to mind. But in either case, I just wanted to frame that, and honestly, I want to separate that part from the film, but it was just me kind of giving my thoughts on it. I mean, really, it was the right thing to do, and if it was anybody that was going to pull that off in that short period of time that they had to do that, it was going to be Ridley Scott. Shot all 23 or 25 scenes in 9 days. and seamlessly got him in the film. I don't know what the film looked like before, but we did see the trailers with Kevin Spacey, and from what we've seen, I mean, most of the shots, that had Spacey in the trailer, and that now we see Christopher Plummer in the film, they look the same. In terms of composition and lighting and things like that, it's really amazing. But in any case, getting into the film itself, I thought the film was good. I did not think it was great. I thought it had maybe award worthy. There are certain elements that rose above for me. For instance, the performance, the performances, not citing Christopher Plummer, and especially Michelle Williams in the role, and I don't know. It was a solid film from Ridley Scott, and I want to call out Ridley Scott as well for him being just a master of the craft. And I can always, no matter what the Ridley Scott film, if I'm into it or not into it, I am always just mesmerized by his hand, by his eye, by his style, how he frames things, how the lighting in his films, just the natural lighting he's able to achieve most of the time in his films, and spot on color. There's not a whole lot of color in Ridley Scott's films. I think that the Martian probably had more color in it than most of his films tend to. That's because of the rich reds and the Martian landscape and all of that kind of stuff. But his films are just so cinematic, and I can't talk about All the Money in the World, the film that came out in 2017, without a quick little sidebar on Alien Covenant, which came out back in May. I enjoyed Alien Covenant. It was maybe a slight disappointment upon rewatching it a couple of times, but I stand by that first 30 minutes of the film is tremendous, and maybe some of if you want to take the first 30 minutes of any Ridley Scott film, I'd put that up there with the best of them, of being Alien Covenant. And a similar pattern follows with All the Money in the World. It had a really strong opening. You were just I was kind of sucked into this world. Most of the film takes place in Italy, and it just, again, just being sucked in with Ridley Scott's his eye. I'm just enchanted by what the man is able to achieve, and it sucks me into that will tend to suck me into a story, but it won't necessarily. Beautiful images alone won't keep me there, not necessarily, but it will tend to make a slower scene move along at a different pace for me, because I'm looking at the fireplace in the background and how warm that is compared to the cold light coming to the window. And I know that's a lot of geeky photography stuff, but that's the kind of stuff I really appreciate in any film, but especially in a Ridley Scott film. Now, the story of the film, I'm pretty sure everyone is at least familiar with this. I really don't remember this from back in the day. I remember reading about this in a book. I think Time magazine had a book of the top 10 kidnappings throughout history, and this was one of them. And it was because Paul Getty being J. Paul Getty being the richest person in the world at the time this happened. I believe it was 1973. refused to pay the ransom of his grandson, and that made big headlines. That made a big splash in the media when that happened, and I think that is ultimately the hook of this story, and the theme of wealth and wealth, material things and wealth versus family versus people, and how Getty equated oftentimes assets to the value of people, and we see his logic, and honestly, it was a sound logic. What he put out to the press and the papers at the time. When he said that if I pay a ransom today, I'll be paying ransom for all of my grandsons, forever. Which I think it was multiple of them. But the story plays out. It's a tense kidnapping thriller because we do get to know the kidnappers, and we get to know their circumstances, and there is a inherent suspense built in there where you get to see from grandson Getty, how he's being attempted to be manipulated by these criminals to try to get him to talk, or to get him to cooperate so that they can cut off a body part, or whatever they needed him to do. And you're sitting there thinking, oh man, this, how can he get out? And when he does try, there is there's a suspense there. There is an escape, almost like a prison break kind of thing going on there. Escape from your captors. That's always a suspenseful tool in any film. But in either case, let me stop and talk about Michelle Williams, who plays God, I'm forgetting the character's name, but she plays the daughter-in-law of J. Paul Getty, and but he regards her as her daughter, at first, but then we realized even that was sort of it wasn't as sincere, and honestly, she never wanted that title of being considered a true Getty and being his daughter per se. She didn't have she had somewhat of a respect for him, but that respect went all out the window, of course, when he said he was going to pay nothing for her child, who is his flesh and blood, for this kidnapping. But Michelle Williams, I remember her from Dawson's Creek. I used to watch Dawson's Creek. Shout out to anybody who remembers that show. She was really nothing remarkable about what she did on that show. She was as good as anybody else on that show. But then once she started, we started seeing her in big movies, prestige movies, like Shutter Island. And I remember the performance she gave in Shutter Island was just chilling. It was such a chilling performance she gave, as the wife of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who she killed their three children, drowned them in a lake, and wow, I was kind of blown away. I know she had been in maybe a couple of films before then, but that performance really shocked me, and I was like, oh my God, that can't be who I think it is from Dawson's Creek. And then in just last year, she was in the Casey Affleck, my 2018 resolution, Ginkgo biloba. Keyword is Ginkgo biloba, because things just kind of, come in and out of my brain. I mean, it's just probably a sign of age, but Manchester by the Sea. Manchester by the Sea. She was in that film maybe for 20 minutes, but she made a prominent splash in that film. She takes this craft seriously, and I don't know how much I'm willing to stand by this, what I'm about to say next, but I predict that Michelle Williams, if she keeps up on the path, and she keeps somehow steering herself into roles, into movies that have characters, for her to really sink her teeth into. I think, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we're going to regard her on the same level as we do Meryl Streep. And like I said, I don't know how much I'm really willing to stick by that, but I'm saying it anyway, because I think she's an incredible talent. So in any case, the rest of the performances were all fine. There was a couple of moments actually that I could swear that I saw Kevin Spacey, like, in a wide shot, or in like a half over the shoulder or something like that. I swear that, maybe a profile shot or something was Kevin Spacey, not Christopher Plummer. I can't confirm that. I'm just saying I swear I saw him, and there's a couple of specific moments that I can bring up, and that's for when you get the DVD and you're able to pause it and zoom in and all that stuff, and really confirm that kind of stuff. But but like I said, it was a seamless. There was nothing about. There was something that I had read, that Ridley Scott said in an interview about a scene where a younger Getty first comes out to the desert and survey the barren land to be able to pull the oil out, and then I think that scene was up against a green screen, inserting Christopher Plummer in place of Kevin Spacey, of a background that was already shot with Kevin Spacey. But in either case, it was seamless, and I was not really even thinking about Kevin, except for the moments where I thought, I wonder if that, and it didn't taint at all my opinion of the film. I thought the story was fine. I thought, the script choices and everything that played out was fine. I just don't know, like, if you put this in line with other great Ridley Scott movies, I don't know that this is in the top 10, to be honest. And that really is saying something, because Ridley Scott makes a whole lot of, he damn near makes a movie every year. And I don't know that this is in the top 10. I have to really lay out a list and look at everything else. But when you think of movies like Alien and Blade Runner and Gladiator and Thelma and Louise, and even The Martian, like, for my money, this movie was not as entertaining to me as The Martian, which came out last year or year before last year, came out 2016. I did not enjoy this film as much as The Martian. That's not to say it's not a better film. It could be, upon watching it and breaking it down. But as of only seeing it one time and going with my gut, I was not as entertained as I was in The Martian. However, that's not to say I was not entertained by All the Money in the World. It is a very tense, very well made, sharp, precise thriller. Mark Wahlberg, okay, he's always sort of the footnote in a lot of things, but I will give him credit. He did his job. Could anyone have played that role? Sure. Did Mark do a good job in that role? You damn right he did. I can't take anything away from him, but I can't necessarily give him any extra praise for what he brought to the table. I don't know. Mark Wahlberg, that might be, a separate, midweek podcast, just to kind of talk about, the state of Mark Wahlberg, because I don't know. He's gotten to this point where he's been in. You see his face so much in so many different movies that I think he has to work harder for you to buy him as yet another character. You have to because we see him so much. We don't know if he's playing the Mark from Transformers or the Mark from the movies he's been doing with Peter Berg. The two that came out last year about the Boston, and then the one on the oh boy, stop it. The one about the oil tanker. I'm again forgetting the title, but those two movies came out last year, and I saw both of them. And Transformers came out last year, so he had three major movies out last year, and one Wahlberg from the next it's hard to tell. Yeah, he buffs up and he'll shrink down for different roles, but the work that he puts in is okay, but he's not doing wildly different like Leonardo DiCaprio does, where you don't see a lot of Leo didn't have a movie out last year, and I don't know that he's going to have a movie out this year either. Although of course he has he has a slate, and his schedule is full to be able to shoot whatever he wants. But I think because Leo takes his time, when we do see Leo, we not only miss him, but he's doing something completely different, and we don't really equate it to it's far, the characters he chooses are far different than the last one he's played. And Mark is just blending into this generic, almost caricature of a Hollywood male actor, and that's kind of a shame because I think Mark is talented. I always go back to his work in Boogie Nights, but I just don't. I feel work, the many films he's done since then, just do not have the same level of nuance and just intrigue as that character he played in Boogie Nights. So in any case, Mark was fine in this movie. And what can I say? It was a good experience at the theater. Of course, you're going to get the visuals from Ridley Scott, as I mentioned. Great moments of tension throughout. I thought it was a really good setup, the way everything sort of built. Few critics might have complained a little bit about the ending, and kind of slowed down. But I really liked the ending. I like how the kidnapping, even after he was released, it still kind of kept unfolding. There was still elements of danger all the way up to the very end, and then tying up the theme nicely. Now I don't know if J. Paul Getty really died at the end of that whole ordeal, but it was wrapped up rather nicely and really kind of tied in with the themes and all that kind of stuff. And everyone lived happily ever after. But so there it is. There's my thoughts on All the Money in the World. So I want to talk about Black Mirror right now. And if you are not familiar with Black Mirror, you may not want to continue on. But if you are, and or maybe you want to bookmark this podcast and come back to it later so you can hear your thought after you see season 4 of Black Mirror. But I just wanted to run down my quick thoughts on Black Mirror season 4. So Black Mirror, just in case you don't know and you want to keep listening, is originally was well, it still is a Great Britain produced TV series by Charlie Brooker, who is a comedian, author, writer, etc., personality, who created this show 4 or 5 years ago, I think. And it played out over there, I believe, on the BBC, and it was over there they do really short seasons. Their seasons are oftentimes 6 episodes, but I think the first season of Black Mirror was only 3 episodes, and they call that a season. And then the second season was 4 episodes, or maybe 5. And then Netflix picked it up after the second season. And, of course, they have the money now to expand, and now they do 6 episode seasons. So this is the 4th season. And I think the show keeps gaining more momentum, gaining more steam and traction after every season. And I was with it from day one. I actually saw the first episode of this on YouTube, probably like 3 years ago, and that one was National Anthem. That was the very first, I believe it was the very first produced episode. But in any case, Black Mirror. If you are into Twilight Zone, if you are into technology, if you like amazing stories or strange stories or Tales from the Crypt, if you like episodic. It's not really episodic. It's more of a anthology. If you like anthology series, then you will love Black Mirror. I'm just gonna flat out predict that. If you like those things, you will love Black Mirror. Black Mirror focuses on technology and uses technology as a way to illustrate and tell stories that mostly are cautionary tales. Most of the stories, have a pessimistic slant about our use of technology and where we're going with this stuff. And it is expertly crafted. Even the episodes I don't really like are really well done. But this particular season, I thought it might be the most consistent season out of the 4 seasons, meaning that I think all the episodes were on a certain level, and none really kind of fell kind of lower to the wayside for me as they had in past seasons. There's always going to be that 1 or 2 episodes in past seasons where I'm like, I don't care for this episode at all, won't watch it again, won't recommend it. While there are other episodes where I can't stop watching it and I can't stop recommending it. This season, while I don't know that there are 2 episodes in here that I really loved and that I would recommend all day long. And let me just jump into it, and just maybe run down a list of the best episodes in season 4, all the way down to my least favorite episodes of season 4 Black Mirror. The first episode is called USS Callister, and boy, this is. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not just the first episode in its sequencing, but it is my favorite episode of the season. It's hard to describe what it's about, but I will try. It is about a software company who has a second in command, a technology guru at this tech company in the future, where they make games that are virtual reality experiences, essentially. So you plug into this game, your consciousness is put into an avatar, and you're able to interact in an environment, in real time, in a very realistic manner. Whatever game this was, you're in space, or you're the space captain of a crew via Star Trek. Although that's kind of where the premise goes. So we start off seeing this starship, and the bridge of this starship, a la Star Trek, and Jesse Plemons, who played I forget his character's name in Breaking Bad, but he was awesome as a Kirk-esque guy who was living out his fantasy of being the captain of a bridge, the captain of a ship on running the bridge, and that ship was called USS Callister. What we find out, though, is that he's not just playing this game and living this fantasy, but the crew and everyone that is sort of running the ship for him and that he commands is actually digital clones or digital copies of people who work at the company who have disrespected him in some form or another. And once we realize that, that gives the game that he's going in to play a whole different twist, because we think, okay, well, all these people are just programs, and he's programmed them to be subservient and to, to listen to him and do what he says and all that kind of stuff. But no, they are doing it out of fear, because he has copied them, their consciousness. Now, their real world counterparts are in the company, in the real world. But in this game, they are fully aware copies of themselves in the digital world, fully conscious, and they are ruled by fear. Because if they get out of line and they don't do what he says, he could do anything he wants to them. He can torture them, for eternity. He can turn them into a creature. He can remove their genitals, whatever. And we actually see some of that. But in any case, so the story plays out from there. I'm not going to get too heavy into spoilers there, but man, oh man, this was a really, really well done, all around entertaining and suspenseful episode. It reminded me a lot of Galaxy Quest, the movie that came out probably 20 years ago now, with Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver, and I believe Sam Rockwell was in the movie, and Galaxy Quest was about a fake starship crew, or it was taking off a Star Trek in a similar manner, but I forget the actual nature of the plot, and it made me want to revisit Galaxy Quest, because that was certainly what the tone of this episode reminded me of. But in any case, it was my favorite episode of Black Mirror season 4. Moving down to number 2, was I actually had a little bit of a challenge, because this could have been my number 1. But this episode is called Metalhead, and it is probably the creepiest episode ever of Black Mirror. And Black Mirror goes to some dark places, but this was maybe by far the darkest and bleakest and most pessimistic one, and mostly because it takes place in a post-apocalypse of an unspecified nature. And to me, that is the best kind of post-apocalyptic world, where you don't know for all of the story or most of the story how things kind of got messed up. And this one starts in that manner, and they it's about, essentially, it comes down to these people scouring the landscape, the wasteland, in a car, and then they get out in a car and go into a warehouse, and then they're attacked by these robot dogs, and these robot dogs are just what made them so creepy was that they're not overly conceptually designed, like movie designs, like shining chrome of the Terminator and things like that. This is based on real world design and technology. We have this technology today, but maybe not to the degree and to the intelligence level that what was going on in this episode. But these robots were hunting people down. It looks like they were programmed to hunt people down, and that maybe the program got corrupted, or AI just took over. So now we start to realize, oh shit, this is what has caused the apocalypse. And when you see these things in action, you see what they can do and how you just can't escape them. Man, that is the entertainment value of this, because you're watching this, and it's almost like a game, where you watch this one character try to survive and outsmart something that probably can't be outsmarted. Well, it can be, but you realize that, okay, it's a deeper situation than just any one of these dog robots. And I remember seeing online there's a company called Boston Dynamics, and they make a robot called the Spot Mini, and it is essentially a dog robot, and it's yellow, and it kind of almost looks like a transformer, but it because you wouldn't necessarily say immediately that it's a dog, but it has four legs, it has a head, and it kind of hops around, and it kind of acts very playful, and you can knock it over, and it'll turn itself back upright on all fours. But I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, But the question Charlie Brooker asked himself is, what if that thing was chasing you? What if it was coming after you? And what if its mission was to destroy you? And that was very, very, very unsettling, because only because we have this technology now. Elon Musk has been ranting and raving about the dangers of AI, and I think he would be a fan of this episode, because at first I was like, oh, listen, I'm not really worried about AI. We'll have it under control. It won't. But after seeing this, yes, we do need to have some restrictions, safeguards around AI, and never ever. I don't know that we should even go down the path of building robots, that are capable of this kind of thing, because obviously in this episode it was probably for some military purpose, and then the AI got loose and it ran amok, and it realized we can use these things to take over the world. The episode is in black and white. It was directed by David Slade, whom I believe he directed the great film The Descent a few years back. One of the better horror movies of the last 20 years. So in any case, that was my number two. Could have been a number one, only because it's just been stuck in my head, and I did watch it twice. By the way, number three is an episode called "Hang the DJ." This one is very romantic, very heavy on virtual reality themes and themes of choice. And I loved how in this episode they toyed, with the idea of these two characters who meet via this app that is supposed to connect people, and via connecting you with different people, it ultimately moves you towards your ultimate match, which will be your mate for life, or for lack of a better word. And this one had a charm to it. The two lead actors playing this really held it down, really held down the romance and chemistry between them, and the idea of going through date after date after date of people that you don't want, and exploring different things. And one thing I thought that was interesting, though, is that they showed the trial and error of dating and sex and casual sex through the woman's point of view. And I remember watching it, and I was just like, that's an interesting choice, because, normally we see guys go through that, and we don't, we don't think twice about it. We see the montage of the Studley guy, whatever, Tom Cruise, whatever, sleeping with many, many different women, whether by purpose or whether just by luck or whatever. Or bad luck in some cases, and in this case, it was bad luck with the woman character in this. But it did cross my mind that it was an interesting choice to have her go through many, many different guys, showing the aftermath, or actually showing the sex, and the thought. I mean, related back to maybe my sexist, chauvinist brain is thinking, oh man, she's really going hard. Is that guy really gonna, is the twist that the guy that she's trying to get to ultimately and fall in love with, is the twist that he's not gonna want her because she's been sleeping around with dozens and dozens of guys, but presumably, I mean, and they show him almost essentially doing the same thing, but actually, he gets stuck with a one. Okay, so a thing with this app is that they when you meet someone, it tells you how long you're supposed to be with that person. So whether it's supposed to be for 24 hours or 24 weeks, you're supposed to be with that person through the whole duration of that, and then that's it. Then you go on to, it gives you a new assignment or a new mate, and then you go to that person for whatever length of time that is. But they showed, while they showed her, going through the motions with all these guys she didn't want to be with, they showed the other guy, he was with, he was stuck with one person that he hated. They did not get along at all. They couldn't, but they were stuck together for 9 months. And everybody she was meeting, it was like, 36 hours, 2 weeks, 1 week, that kind of thing. But anyway, that was an interesting choice to kind of flip that notion on its head. And I mean, I came out at the end of the day saying, well, hey, there is nothing wrong with that. She's exploring, and she didn't like having sex with all those guys, but that's what the app was kind of pushing her to do. And I wonder if there's some sort of metaphorical reference in what's going on, these days with Tinder and all that kind of stuff. Well, there is obviously there, but I'm just something that might even be a little deeper in that regard. So anyway, like I said, this episode is really heavy on the virtual reality. I thought it was a good take on it, and it's Hang the DJ is my number 3. Even though this was one of they I think in every season they have a romantic sort of premise in each of their seasons, and I don't know that this one reaches the heights of San Junipero. Actually, it doesn't, but it certainly swings for those fences. There is something about it that feels amiss towards the end of it, but this is one I will definitely revisit again, and that is Hang the DJ. Number 4 was an episode called Black Museum, and this was, oh boy, this was another episode like in the vein of White Christmas, which is my all-time favorite Black Mirror episode, starring John Hamm. Black Museum is is very much plays with the idea of multiple narratives, a multiple narrative structure, very similar to White Christmas, to the point where as I was making this list, I thought I was missing an episode, or I thought Netflix had failed to put an episode I saw on this, because it was a story. It was only one story within Black Museum, and Black Museum, I think it had 3 at the minimum, maybe even 4, but they were all connected. And it was there to kind of illustrate the different technologies that were going to eventually lead to one of the main characters' demise at the end. And it was very well done, very well wrapped up. A good, interesting twist on the different texts that were used. But if anything that I didn't like about it, I thought it was too much. I actually thought there was too much story, too many different threads. It might have been too fast, and I don't know. I mean, I may like it, watching it again. Now that I kind of know what's going on, I can go back and, okay, because as you're watching it, there are so many questions. None, most of which is, where the fuck is this going? But it ultimately goes to a satisfying conclusion. And for me to even start to kind of lay out the plot here, it's going to make my head hurt, because it is that dense, but very enjoyable, very enjoyable. It makes more sense as it unspools, as it goes along. So anyway, that is Black Museum. Number 5 is an episode called Crocodile. Now here we're getting down to the last 2 is part of like getting still of a high quality, but these 2 are not my favorites. I don't think I will revisit them, which is number 5 and 6. Crocodile, takes a sort of tried and true premise of putting two people in the moral dilemma of committing murder and covering it up, and then in this world where memories can be accessed by insurance agents or police. We see one woman's desperate struggle to keep this murder a secret, and she will do anything, and I mean anything, to keep this thing a secret over the span of many years. And it has, it was kind of a slow episode, only in that I said, okay, if this is all there is, I couldn't see where the tech was really going and how it was helping to move the story along. But oh boy, does it deliver? And oftentimes Black Mirror episodes do that. They often start with a lot of questions, and you're wondering, where is this going? How is this going? And I would say 90% of the time they deliver on. They give you those answers. So take that, J.J. Abrams, and your mystery box. But no, I take that back, because I love J.J. Abrams, and I love mystery boxes too. But I'm just saying, Black Mirror really, they kind of give you the mystery box, but then they keep going. And then they take out what it is in the box, but they turn it on an angle so you can't see the whole thing until the very end. And that is really cool. But Crocodile, while very well done, very well acted, and very intriguing, again, on the lower rung of my episodes, but still highly recommend it. And maybe I could possibly visit it in the future. Now, this last episode is called Archangel, and it was directed by Jodie Foster, and she has been somewhat in the news, making the rounds and talking about the show, and then talking about what's going on with the recent sex scandals and things like that. But I thought this episode was just okay. I thought it was just okay. I mean, it's an interesting idea. In the beginning, a woman loses her 6-year-old child. Loses her just for a couple of hours or whatever as she wanders away from a park. She's found by a stranger. So therefore, the woman was so traumatized, she decides to have something called the company was called an Archangel, but I forgot what the thing that was actually put into her brain. So she has an implant put into her daughter's brain so that she can track her every movements, but then also even further, she can see what her daughter is seeing at any given time. And then an extra feature added to that is that she can choose to block certain things from her daughter seeing and from recording into her daughter's memory. So, for instance, if she was to look at a murder or two people fighting, it would blur it out so her daughter wouldn't know what was going on. And then later we find out that when her daughter is being tested, she doesn't know what two people fighting looks like. She doesn't know what something scary looks like, or something threatening. Which you can see how that can turn out to be a problem. So Archangel is really ultimately a good cautionary tale about the dangers of parental control. But I thought ultimately, the ending just did not stick for me. It showed, the daughter, 10 years later down the road, she's a teenager. Her hormones are raging, and she's wanting to experiment with drugs and that kind of thing. And, the mother takes it upon herself to spy on the daughter, and then to try to manipulate her from afar without confronting her daughter on these things. And I think it just goes back to, what we already know about, children and teenagers, is that the more you keep things away from them, the more those things, they want to pursue them, the more the curiosity will get the best of them. And, I think it is a good episode for parents in particularly to watch. It didn't resonate that well with me, but it was well done. I really appreciated what was attempted here. And it's not a bad episode. It's just not my favorite. I don't need to watch it again. it had some interesting, performances in there. I thought the main girl was quite good, and Jodie Foster, directed it pretty solidly. But it's just not one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. Out of all the episodes, it's certainly not one of my favorites out of this season. And it almost taints the season, but I would still say that there's enough good. There's more good in this episode than bad. Again, for me, it just where it kind of goes. I thought, yeah, it just was kind of a meh kind of ending, and didn't necessarily tie in the technology to the degree that I was hoping that it would. But there it is, season 4, Black Mirror. Every episode ranked. So if we can give you just go back to run it down. Episode 1, USS Callister. Episode 2, Metalhead. Episode 3, Hang the DJ. Episode 4, Black Museum. Episode 5, Crocodile, and episode 6, Archangel. So those are my favorite to least favorite season 4 Black Mirror episodes. All right, that's going to end another Deep Cinema episode. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to New Flavor TV for more of these podcasts, other podcasts. Deep Hoops is still on right now. If you're a basketball fan or a basketball junkie, rope somebody into that. Get our alerts, subscribe, share, and I will see you midweek, where I will have another episode coming to you. And this one I'm going to be talking about, bringing up a question about black studios, is black-owned studios. Let me put it like that. Is it time for there to be a black-owned studio in the midst of hashtags like Oscar So White and this controversy with Jessica Chastain in the cover of the Hollywood Reporter, and being all white women on the cover, and constant pushes for diversity in all facets of entertainment, and especially in front of the camera. Is it time to just have a black-owned studio? And I'm going to break that down and what that question means, and what it could mean going into the future. All right, thank you very much. Peace.